Hello, thank you for joining me. I'm going to show you how to disassemble and reassemble a JJRC H8D quadcopter. Should you need to replace motors or replace the main circuit board or any LED lights, so that you have a fair idea of what it is, what you need to do, and what it looks like. So although I've already disassembled, don't want to take you through the boring routine of having to undo 38 screws, but yes, including the removing the props and the screws on the props, there are still 34 screws that need to be removed. Now the screws that need to be removed on each arm are one here, one there, one there, one there, one there, and one here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 on each arm, that's 24. Then there's these 4 screws here need to be removed. So that gives us an extra 4. That's 28 screws. Okay, so once you remove those screws, you'll then need to just pull the top cover off, and then you will be left with the base. Okay, if you still need to remove the main circuit board here, as you can see, this sits on here like that. There are another 4 screws where you see these 4 big holes here that need to be removed, and also another 2 screws for the on-off switch that is positioned, look here, over there. So that's fastened down onto another 2 screws there, giving you 34 screws. Okay, if you need to remove the motors, these are the motors on the mounts itself, which goes in like that. But if you need to remove the motor, then you need to just pull the motor out of the mount over here. Okay, so if you need to replace the motor, you remove it there, and then follow the wires. As you can see, this is magnetic. Follow the wires, and you'd have to desolder them off of the main board, or if you prefer, cut the wires and then put your new motor on, and then join them together either by soldering or just tying them very tightly and using shrink wrap tubing, whichever your method you prefer to use, or to join wires. So essentially, if you need to remove everything, you'd need to take these things off, remove the board. Now also, when you remove the board, there are 4 little rubber washers that actually fit onto the base over here. Okay, so there's another 3, so don't forget, you've got to remove those if you need to replace the base completely, or else they will remain on there if you just need to change the main circuit board. So I'm going to put this all together again, and then show you a few final little tricks for the assembly, including the props. So be with you soon. Welcome back. So I've secured the board back on to here and everything. I've put the 3 LEDs into position, but just to show you, they can be a little bit tricky. But to put the LED strips back or to replace them, there's a little slot. You start off at the beginning there, and then slowly you can see there's little pins behind and a clip in front. Just need to maneuver it around. And then the last one here, you just need to clip in. And there you go. There's the LED lights back. As you can see, a little bit springy. But hold them in. Now, while I've got this open, I'm going to show you where the controller antenna is, if you don't know. But this is the controller antenna, okay? So it's a similar antenna to the one on, if you've got the FPV camera that sticks out of the camera, and normally this just lies in here. Now this is a mod that you don't necessarily have to do, but I prefer having my controller antenna out of the way of interference as much as possible. So I'm going to drill a hole over here and feed it through the bottom so that it'll come out near one of the stands for the legs, and then I can attach it onto the leg with a cable tie, or just tie it with something that's going to hold it in place so that it's positioned below the quad and out of the way. So if I show you here, the legs attach over there, and so also with the battery coming in over here, I need to make a hole over here. So yeah, you can use a bigger or better screwdriver than I'm using, and I'm going to have to make that hole a bit bigger to feed the antenna through. So I'll either get a bigger drill bit, but let me just see if the star screwdriver is sufficient. Okay, so sorry, concentrating a bit there, so I don't know if you lost view there. But here's the antenna. There's the hole that I made. It's still not thick enough to put it all the way through. Let me see what I can do. Yeah. Widen it. Let's see if it'll go through now. As you can see, over here is where I'm going to get it out. So I just need to make the hole just a little bit bigger, and this will be accomplished. So let me do that, get that out of the way, and be back with you again shortly. I've reassembled it, put all the screws back in, also put the legs on. So yes, if you can see, I made the hole over there, fed the controller antenna through, and then all I'm going to do is cable tie it onto the leg so then it'll be positioned below and outside the craft, and it should get much better reliability and reception without the risk of anything interfering with it at an angle away from the controller. Okay, while I've got it upside down, what I also do with my quads is, just put a notice on, if found please, and my telephone number. So if anything happens and it unfortunately lands on somebody's property where I can't find it or retrieve it or access it, or I lose it and I can't find it and somebody does, I just hope that they'll probably give me a call, and that way I may still be able to get it back. So yes, if you didn't see that properly, this is the controller antenna after I made that hole where I showed you, and cable tied onto there, and that's where it will then be positioned outside and below the craft. Okay, so inspired by Dunstan Dunhill, who's quite popular on YouTube for doing reviews and modifications, he did a lot of modifications on the JJRC H8C, and this has inspired me to do modifications on the H8D. Now the H8C, one of the main problems of that was burning out motors very quickly, and there were a couple of reasons for that. One, that the motor itself couldn't be adequately cooled, but now on the H8D there are vents to help assist with the cooling, so this is not necessary to do on the H8D because on both sides there are vents to assist with the cooling. Now one of the biggest problems though is that the shafts, if you try and turn the shafts, they're quite stiff and they stick because it uses bushes. Now I've put bearings on the other three motors, and I'm going to show you how I do this so that you can see. But if you see the difference if I spin there as opposed to trying to spin here, there's a huge difference. So yes, this friction just labours the motor and helps it burn out. So to do this modification, we need to remove the prop. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay, and don't forget, when you reassemble, make sure you put your props back on the correct motors. It's an error easily made, but basically, you got the little diagram there that's showing you which direction the motor goes in, and so then the propeller goes in that. So this one, top front left, is clockwise, and then when you put the propeller on, you want the top end and the cutting edge to be in the same direction, with the lowered edge behind. So when this turns clockwise, you get the lift and it goes through. Obviously opposites there, so if this one's clockwise, this one is also clockwise, and these two are anti-clockwise, so you can see that is different to that. So just a reminder while we're at it. So okay, once you remove the propeller, you press down on this shaft. Now this will come out completely, but here you can see over here, this is the bush, and there's one on the top here as well. So to get those out, if you put this back in and just push up at a bit of an angle, you should catch the edge, there we go, and push the bush out. So that's the bush, the solid item, and you just need to do it the other way around to get the one out on the other side. So push up, down, and out it comes. Now the difference between a bush and a bearing, this is the bearing here. The bush is just a solid little piece of brass or metal or whatever it is, and the bearing, you get open bearing and sealed bearings. Now this is an open bearing on one side and sealed on the other side, which I prefer to use, but I'll tell you why now. But this is the sealed side and this is the open side. And the reason I like to use one with an open side is so that I can lubricate it, and I use synthetic lubricant or syn lube. You can get from a bicycle or cycle shop. It's used quite widely for oiling bicycle chains, and yeah, that's just to lubricate the bearings and help it go easier. So if I show you here, make sure we got the open side where you can see the little bearings. You just need to drop a few little drops in that. Okay, so then take the shaft, put the bearing on with the open side towards the inside, and then put this back on the quad. Just make sure your gears are moving quite good and freely. Then you're going to need to hold that at the bottom, because if you don't, it's just going to drop out. Okay. I'm going to just leave that at an angle. Just put a bit more, some lube onto this bearing. Okay, and then put the open side towards the inside, press down, and there it seals or slots into there to keep that firm. We then just need to put the prop back on. And I've got the right finger. Hold it. And there we are. So try and spin it now. It makes a huge difference and helps make the motors last longer and also perform better. Another mod that I've made, I've removed the propeller to show you, is that there's a bit of a gap between the shaft and the housing for the motor. So if this crashed and the arm hits at an angle, or propellers hit there, this shaft isn't that strong, and there's a good chance that this can actually push inwards and strip the gears at the bottom, because this needs to remain flush at all times. So what I've done is I've used a magic substance called Prackley's putty. Basically it's two types of putty that is soft, and then when you mix the two types together, it forms a compound that hardens. So it's quite easy to mold, and essentially what one needs to do is fill in the gap between the housing and the shaft housing. So if there is a knock or anything, this will help prevent the gears stripping and also causing damage. So obviously we don't want to crash, but it can happen. So this is another interesting little mod. So if you can see, you don't want to get it sort of on the motor. You just need to bridge the gap on each one of the arms between the shaft housing and the motor housing to give it a bit more strength in the event of a crash or an accident like that. Let me just put the prop back on. So yeah, you can be innovative and use or do something else. Dustin Dunhill actually just took rubber pads off the feet of a like wireless router and stuck it in there so that it stayed in there and would also give it some protection should that happen. Okay, the other modification I made is that normally you get a lot of jello due to vibration, and I found by just taking a bit of foam and sellotape and putting it on the top of the camera, so this is where it attaches to the bottom of the quad. Just by having a bit of foam and sellotape, I've reduced jello quite considerably. You know, so it does work quite effectively for, you know, the quad, because it just helps absorb the vibration between the bottom and the top. So yeah, essentially, which way does this go on again? Yeah, we want the front towards the front. Yeah, it clips on. Might as well just plug it in while we're here. So yes, that's a simple little modification. One thing I still love about this one is you can adjust or tilt the angle of the camera as you want it when you get used to it. This will obviously be kept out of the way once I secure it onto there. That's it. Okay. Then with this, as you know, you get your stock battery, which is a 500 mAh 7.4 volt. Now that, as you know, fits in quite easily and comfortably. I then also managed to get these 650 mAh batteries, also 7.4 volt, and if you look, it's slightly bigger, but without any modification or anything like that. These fit in a bit longer and give you a little bit more flying time. I'll also put in the description below the video, you know, the specifications for this, or possibly a link where you can get the bigger one if you want. And then I went even further. I can now use 900 mAh batteries, And if you compare it to the stock battery, quite a bit of difference in size. The thickness not so much, but in terms of the length. Now if you go to put it in your battery bay, this is too long, it's not going to fit. Okay, whereas the others do. But I've got a spare base here, and let me show you. So this one will open. So this is the normal stock battery. When you put it in, it goes in like this, that far. And then if you look very closely here, the furthest it will go back is there's a little pillar, a post there. So it will not go back further than that. The 650s, if I put them in, still leave quite a bit of space, but still also won't go further back than that. So in order to use these batteries, and I'll put a link in the description where you can get these, because the size is actually important and relevant. You can't just use any 900 mAh battery. So you can see it fits in there quite comfortably, but it won't go further back than that little pillar, and you see it sticks out there. So the best thing to do is, even you don't have to disassemble your quad, but if you can see over here and in here, if you just take a hobby knife, you need to get in down there, and then you can just cut this little pillar off over there. Okay, and once that is removed, as you can see here, no longer there, this will slide in and go much more forward, and there's still even a bit of room. So then that actually fits in quite nicely and comfortably, okay, because it doesn't have that little pillar in its way. Now the only other thing you need to do then, if you want to use this, is that unfortunately these batteries come with what we call a Jst connection, and for this model, the stock batteries and also the 650 mAh battery I've got a different connection. Now this is called a Jst 2.54 SM 2-pin connection, whereas this is a normal straightforward Jst connection. So for it to accommodate this, it's never wise to cut off the battery ones and then just join on a Jst. I've made a harness or an adapter, whatever you'd like to call it. So by taking a normal female Jst connection and a female Jst 0.54 connection, taking the these two, join them together, essentially to make an adapter like this. So you can join them by tying them and then putting shrink wrap as well. If you prefer soldering them together, do that. Just remember, if you do this, don't connect the red wire to the other red wire. You must do it opposite, because once you do it, then the on-off switch is the wrong way around, and suddenly you haven't got it correct. So if you do this, make sure that you connect the red with the black and vice versa, black with the red, but not red on red and black on black. Now I will make a few of these up and make them available for people in UK and possibly Europe, if this is not something you're comfortable doing yourself. So I'll put a link also in the description where you can get these once I've made a few up. If you feel you do need one and you can't see one available, feel free to send me a message below and say you would like one, and I'll get back to you. But I'll try and make a few of these available. So one other thing you'd need to do if you'd like to do the mod for the 900 Mah battery is you'll need to make two little holes at the back here on the battery door. Now you can do it by drilling two little holes and just widening the gap. You could also use a little pair of sharp side cutters and just cut out, and the purpose of this is so when you put the 900 Mah battery in, there is a little bit of space inside, but you know, when you use the adapter, there's not too much left. So basically this allows you to feed this through. Put the two wires on the one side, these two on the other side, and you close it like that. Then you take the adapter, put the adapter on, and that's it. So you've got the strands sticking out the back here, but you know, it doesn't do any harm. Okay, it may not look as neat and tidy or anything like that. And so that's it. I suppose the main thing to see is whether everything still works after pulling it apart. Now one other thing I also did is that I found the FPV screen, you know, every time you move forward this would just flop forward. So I simply just took an elastic band, as you can see over here, looped it around, fed it through, and then I hook it over the antenna over here. And this actually holds this quite firmly in place, so there's no flopping around, and it's quite firm and steady. So let me just put this on, switch the quad on, okay, bind. Okay, everything seems fine. Wants to take off, but I haven't got space. I'm not going to take off in this confined area. So thank you very much for sharing and for watching. I hope you found it interesting and helpful. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to see further tests and any further modifications either for the H8D or any of my other quads on the channel. Thanks very much. Bye bye.